Last year was a bit of a lost season for the Cleveland Browns, but that was to be expected as Deshaun Watson had an 11-game suspension. However, when he did get on the field, it wasn't awe-inspiring, which makes the Cleveland Browns actually one of the most difficult teams to project in 2023. But we're going to go ahead and try to do it anyway in today's video. And what's crack-a-lackin'? It's your boy Broshmo, just in case you did not know so. Go ahead, become a bro and subscribe. Leave this video a thumbs up if you enjoy the content as always. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. I love having that nice, beautiful football discourse with you, as the next team on the Deep Dive series is the Cleveland Browns. We're going to be going over the coaching staff, the scheme, the roster, and then somehow, I'm going to give you a prediction on how I think the Cleveland Browns will do at the end of the video, so hang tight with me. But without further ado, let's go ahead, get into the coaching staff, as we got Kevin Stefanski. Why was that so difficult to say? I couldn't tell you, but he is in year 4 now here as the head coach, and he's done a wonderful job with this team offensively. A bit of his scheme is influenced by Gary Kubiak, who was the offensive advisor with Minnesota when Kubiak was an OC there in, I think it was 2019. Yeah, it was the year before he got hired. But here in Cleveland, it's a very collaborative effort, as Alex Van Pelt deals a lot with that. Now they're going to hand the keys a bit more over to Deshaun Watson to operate this offense. And we'll kind of talk about Watson when we get to the roster, and why I think we're going to see a lot of progression from this squad. And I mean, it's really easy just looking at the roster that this team should be on paper very, very good. And we'll talk about the reasons maybe why not. But Stefanski's done a wonderful job, especially with the rushing game. Like one of, if not the best rushing attacks in all of football. And he's not afraid to go heavy personnel. I think it was last couple of seasons, I think it's about 44% he will go out in 12 personnel. It's about 14% the last couple of years where he'll deploy 13 personnel. So he does a lot of different things. Like we'll see outside zone, we'll see pin and pull, counter trap. Like you get a lot of variety outside of they don't really do a lot of inside zone here, but it's a lot of variety. And you're kind of hoping that some of that will also happen in the passing game. And I think slowly but surely it will, as they have a ton of guys on the roster at wide receiver. In terms of pass catchers, I think they got like 16, 17 names currently at the wide receiver position. They're truly going to be bringing into this season a variety, and we talk about variety as the spice of life, especially a receiver. They're gonna have a lot of guys that could do a lot of different things. So I think this offense is gonna be much more fun to watch, especially and particularly the passing game, as they really, I think, put an emphasis on trying to bring in some guys that can create after the catch. But Alex Van Pelt, I said he plays a bit of a hand in here, and he does. He brings that wide zone blocking scheme experience coming from Green Bay, where he was the QB's coach. And I want to say he was under Matt LaFleur. I always get Matt and Mike confused. I'm gonna go with it's Matt LaFleur. So he brings a little bit of the experience from that here to Cleveland. And he actually spent 10 years in the NFL, which is kind of wild. But I think what I'm most excited about, and it's safe to say, I think defensively this team underachieved. And now they bring in Jim Schwartz, who is a phenomenal defensive coordinator. He was formerly the defensive assistant for the Titans last year, but he has a long track record of success, whether it's as a DC, as he was with the Eagles, there we go, or even as a head coach. He had a little bit of a, let's just call it an interesting tenure as a head coach with the Detroit Lions. But what he is bringing to this squad is this team schematically is going to flip from like a single gap scheme to a double gap, and they're going to go with a Y9 alignment. And I think that's really going to set up just Myles Garrett to be even more destructive. We're going to look at some of the parts there on the defensive line that just lends a lot of encouragement. This is a team, particularly with Schwartz, because he wants to win with just the defensive line. He'll come in with slants and loops and stunts and all that, but he's not afraid to blitz either. He might not have a very high blitz rate, but he's pretty surgical with it. And when he does bring the blitz, typically it always hits home, and it's so fun, especially when you have a weapon like JOK. But I think the biggest change here will be what they do in coverage. This was a team I felt like under Joe Woods wanted to play quarters, but because of maybe some of the pieces there in the secondary, or I think more in particular just the inability to stop the run, because that was a huge problem for the defense. Like the Cleveland couldn't stop the run worth crap. They were one of the worst run defense units in all of football. So they had to kind of like go to like cover 3 and try to put more players in the box. Now, Schwartz, I think he's going to bring more of this like man coverage scheme, which Denzel Ward's been begging for. I think we're going to see a lot of like quarters match. So essentially like a man scheme to some regard, a man coverage scheme. So I'm very excited to see exactly how this defense looks for the Cleveland Browns under Jim Schwartz. But let's go ahead, get to the roster. Before that, I want to give a special thanks and shout out to Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy is currently one of the most premier fantasy betting apps, and they got a best ball tournament with $15 million in cash prizes. So if you sign up at Underdog Fantasy using promo code Broshmo, they will match your first deposit up to $100. Remember, use promo code Broshmo when you sign up, and they will match that first deposit up to $100. We're knee deep into fantasy football season, and there's not a better place to play fantasy football than Underdog Fantasy. And they don't just have football, they have a variety of other sports, including esports. I just found that out this week. Kind of wild. But as always, bet responsibly, my friends. Let's get into this offense, because this offense has a ton of star potential, but we got to start at the quarterback position, because in that 6-game sample size we had of Deshaun Watson, he did not look good. He just didn't. 9 turnover worthy plays over that 6-game sample size we had. When he did attack deep, he wasn't fairly accurate. He only had 3 completions on passes 20 plus yards. It just didn't look good. But there are a couple of things we need to kind of remind ourselves when it comes to Deshaun Watson. He hadn't played football for over 700 days. So I'm not saying all that is just him shaking off the rust, but we definitely have to contribute a little bit of that to it, because this guy was talked in the same vein as like the Mahomes of the world, the Josh Allens, the Burrows. He was a top 5 quarterback at Houston. So it's hard. I can't just sit here and honestly say, oh, no, he's washed. Like, no, we're not too far removed from that. This guy didn't play football for a long time. So yeah, there's going to be a bit of him getting back into the swing of things. He was learning a new scheme there under Kevin Stefanski that's vastly different from what he was asked to do under Bill O'Brien. So part of that is going to take its toll on him. Am I saying he's going to return to that top 5 status? No, I can't confidently say that. But I do expect him to be far much better than what we saw in that small little smidget of a sample size. How much better, though? That's kind of the big question. How much better will Deshaun Watson be? But it's easy to be encouraged when you look at just what he's surrounded by. He has one of the best, if not the best, offensive line in all of football. He has probably the best running back in all of football. He has a variety of different weapons. And I mean, just looking at this receiving core, like I said it earlier in the video, variety is the spice of life, and they made sure to go out and get variety when it came to this receiving core. And let's just look at the starters. Amari Cooper, man, he is a wide receiver 1 in the NFL still. He had over 1,000 yards last season, and you're hoping that he'll be able to get that chemistry with Watson here in year 2. Yeah, 1,100 yards last season, 9 tutties. So you're hoping he's going to get that chemistry with Watson this season, but he is, I'm willing to say, still a top 15 receiver in the league. You got Donovan Peoples-Jones, who kind of had a breakout season for the most part, had over 800 yards receiving, 3 tutties. Just a good, big-bodied receiver there. And now they add Elijah Moore, because one of the biggest problems with this squad last season was no one was making plays after the catch. Their best player was Kareem Hunt in terms of the receiving game and in terms of creating after the catch. Like Amari Cooper can do a decent job at that, but they didn't have that yak guy in the receiving core. Elijah Moore comes in with that ability, the ability to stretch the field and produce after the catch. But they also added some other weapons that are a little bit different than what they have in terms of their starters, as we're going to look at here, as they added some speedy threats in Marquise Goodwin, who's currently on the non-football injury list. So hoping he comes back nice and healthy. You got Jakeem Grant, probably more of a return man, special teamer than he is a true depth receiver. But they added more speed because, I mean, they had Anthony Schwartz last season, and Schwartz, he's more track player than actual football player. So they add Marquise Goodwin, who is actually a very good football player who adds that vertical speed threat. But then they get a big body vertical threat in Cedric Tillman through the draft. I actually really liked that pickup there. I thought it was about the right range for him, but that addition really adds just another layer to this squad. But I said they go pretty deep receiver wise. They still got Schwartz. They got David Bell, who was an after the catch machine. Didn't really see a ton of that last year. Only 2 forced missed tackles, because it's not like he's a high end athlete. But he did that on 24 catch. So hopefully, like, I don't even know if he's guaranteed to even make this roster. They bring in Jalen Darden, who's more of similar to Jakeem Grant in terms of his role, special teamer, speedy vertical threat. Michael Woods, who saw a bit of playing time last season, I believe, not much, but I mean, he saw some time as a rookie there. Probably a long shot to make the roster here. Not really any other notable names, but it's going to be interesting to see who ends up being the wide receiver 5 and if they hold on to 6, because I think that's kind of wide open. I kind of lean Goodwin because I'm just a big fan of Goodwin. I think he is just a phenomenal wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 in the league, just to have as long as he can stay healthy. Grant has a special team experience, but I think Grant and Bell are probably the guys vying for that 6th spot on the roster. So it's like they're pretty deep there. And you also have David Njoku, who played pretty darn well last year. Had over 600 yards, had 4 tutties. He's just a wonderful athletic receiving threat there for the Browns, and this was a team I talked about. They didn't mind going 12 or 13 personnel, and they retained Harrison Bryant, but they add Jordan Atkins, who's another athletic receiving threat to the mix here. So there is a lot of parts to like in this receiving core, and I expect them to be expected. I expect the offense to look a hell of a lot smoother than it did last year, but first and foremost, this offense is set up by what they can do in the run game. Let's run through the offensive line, then we'll get to what the running backs can do here. And I mean, it's Nick Chubb and company, but there's one running back I want to talk about in particular. But we got Jedrick Wills, who's developed into a very nice starting left tackle in the league, opposite Jack Conklin. As long as he can stay healthy, you feel like you're in a really good place with your tackles. And then you go to the guard play, and the guard play is everything for this squad. They want big athletic guards that can move, but that also have a lot of power throughout their frame. And they got that in Wyatt Teller, who they didn't even draft. He was originally drafted by the Bills and then basically traded in a pick swap. And they end up getting this pro ball guard. You got to love it. And then Joel Bitonio, who might be one of the most underrated top 5 guards in the league. It kind of just feels that way. But like phenomenal there. You have Ethan Posick, who had a breakout season. Another guy who unfortunately missed a few games because of injury last year. How many games did he specifically play? So he ended up missing 4 games, but literally had a breakout year. He was kind of, we just talked about in the previous video, the Pittsburgh Steelers, right? We talked about Mason Cole, who it literally looked like this dude was just going to be a tremendous bust after just kind of like fading out in Arizona, and he was able to get his career back on track, and it felt like that the NFL game wasn't too much for him. And then he's like, yeah, no, I can be a competent start-in center in this league. A guy that had the athletic traits, and it all started clicking. For Posick, that season was last year. A guy in Seattle who had all the athletic traits, but missed some games, didn't play well, comes over here to Cleveland and just produces. You love to see it. There is not one weak spot on that defensive line, and you love to see it, man. This is a team that wants to run the football, that can run the football, and they can just enforce their will with that start in 5. But they actually got some really good depth here on the offensive line, as James Hudson, someone who came in last year and still working on his polish as a pass protector, but it's there in terms of what he can do as a run blocker. Like, he's got the length, he's still learning how to use his hands properly, but he's got great movement skills. We knew he was going to be a bit of a project, but one worth taking on. And in the few times that we saw him last season, I thought he looked pretty darn good. DeJuan Jones, coming over there from Ohio State, I had a day 2 grade on. He ends up sliding a bit. I don't think it was an injury red flag. I think teams were kind of afraid. Guys of that size they typically get banged up. But someone who at like 360 moves pretty darn well for a 360 pounder, and they ended up getting him in the 4th round. So I really like the depth there they have at tackle. And then you move to the inside, and honestly, I want to talk more about the center depth than the guard depth, because honestly, they got Drew Forbes, and that's about it. Like, Forbes, he came in and he looked nice in the very few snaps he played last season. They bring in Wes Martin, but if Wes Martin's ever starting, it sucks. He's instantly the worst player on your offensive line, and it doesn't even come close. But at center, Nick Harris, unfortunately, injuries played a large part in just his ineffectiveness, but an undersized center who things just haven't like worked out thus far. So they bring in Luke Whippler, who, not the strongest guy, not the fastest guy, but in terms of what he can do as a technician, footwork, how he uses his hands, I thought it was all NFL ready. He ends up slipping because of injury, and they get a great steal in the 6th round. I think there's a good case that Nick Harris might not even make the squad. Depends on how they see the versatility of like a Luke Whippler, because Nick Harris, ain't no way at his size he can play guard. But Whippler, I think, could play guard if they want him to. So they got some decent depth there on the offensive line as well. And then it just helps out this disgusting run game, as going back, they have probably the best running back in all of football. In terms of just running the football, I know he might not be like an ideal receiving threat, but like, no one's touching this guy when they actually if you're handing him the football in the backfield. This guy is phenomenal, man. His forced missed tackle rate was among the tops in the league. Matter of fact, I'm gonna go confirm that. So it's like he's always in that top 5 mix. Over the course of that time, though, I think he is first or second in career forced missed tackles. But who I really want to talk about is the guy that I got a picture of right over. There we go. That's the best way I can do it. Over there in Jerome Ford, because boy, the buzz on him is quite nice coming out of training camp, as they feel really good about him, apparently, as their running back too, as the compliment. And I was a huge fan of him coming out of the 2022 NFL draft. He was running back 8 for me. And it's not like he was just some kind of guy that emerged out of Cincinnati. He was formerly of Alabama. So this was a highly recruited player who wanted to see playing time, wasn't seeing Alabama, goes to Cincinnati and just has a monster year. And I think he's got legit speed. Maybe long speed could be better, but I mean 4.46, dude. I'm not gonna. That's great speed for a running back. He's got great vision, great ball carrier vision. He sees the hole almost immediately, and he times his plant and his burst exceptionally well. A guy that can gain yards in chunks. So it doesn't surprise me that they have such a high opinion of Jerome Ford in this backfield as a potential relief to Nick Chubb. Now, when it comes to the receiving game, yeah, Chubb's going to be pretty active. They might get Ford involved, but it's going to be Demetric Felton, who I like because he's a very versatile player. A former, I believe he was actually playing in the slot for UCLA. And I think he could No, he was playing running back. Oh man, it feels like it's been so long now. I can't even remember right. Regardless, he was someone who came in and I thought was gonna probably like kind of contest to play the slot. He's now here at running back, but someone who you could play a variety of different spots in terms of what he can do in the passing game. He could do it from the slot. He could do it from the backfield. I love that. Behind those guys, I don't really think there's anyone of note if we're really gonna talk about that. Like, I'm not a big John Kelly guy. I never was. They do have Hassan Hall, right? Yeah, out of Georgia Tech. Didn't evaluate the guy, but he did test well. I do remember that. But like, regardless, like you have a very good backfield. You're going to be able to set up the run how you feel, like how you see it. Like, the run's going to be an important part of this offense, and it is going to, and they're going to do it successfully. It's almost like all you could hope to do is not stop it, but neutralize it to some degree, hold it back for a little bit. Where defenses are really going to key on is trying to force Deshaun Watson to make mistakes. Like, again, there's no stopping this running game. There really, really isn't, especially just with going back to the coaching staff. Stefanski is one of the best coaches in the league when it comes to drawing up run plays, and he has the personnel to really do whatever the hell he wants. So Deshaun Watson, will he be good? Will he step up? That's why my question there is, will Deshaun Watson be good? Can he be good? So hard to project this team. I imagine they're going to be in that 11 to 15 range, middle to slightly above the middle of the league when it comes to overall offensively, what they can do. I like what they've done. And when we're going to go to the defense in a minute here. And I really do think the defense is going to be vastly better than they were last year. I think last year they were like a bottom of the league unit. A lot of that stemmed from their inability to stop the run, but they did do some things to mitigate that. And you know what? Let's just go ahead and get to it when it comes to the defense. I do have Jordan Elliott listed here as a starter, but I think Siaki Ika is going to eat a little bit into that. They got some of these big body guys, like going out getting Dalvin Tomlinson, who's 325, grabbing Siaki Ika in the third, who's what was he at the combine? Regardless, he's going to be around the 330 to 340 range. It's getting these big meat eaters because, yeah, with that wide alignment, there's going to be a lot of space in the middle of the field. And with Schwartz, he expects those second level players, the linebackers, to really fill in a lot of the holes and come in and make plays in the run game. And I do got a bit of a question on how JOK kind of plays into that. But getting those meteor guys really does help when it comes to that double gap in style that they're going to be playing. But Jim Schwartz has been noted saying, hey, I want Ferraris, not dump trucks. So that tells me that, man, there's still going to be a place in here for a guy like Jordan Elliott, who I loved coming out of Missouri, hasn't really quite worked out in the league, but I'm hoping maybe, hey, just maybe, he can do something under Jim Schwartz. They do have, they bring in Maurice Hurst. They drafted a few years ago Tommy Togiai. These guys that kind of fit this, like, oh, they're more like 3 techs, but I think it'll all work out here. And they bring in Zadarius Smith to pair up with Myles Garrett, and they're gonna put these guys on an island with those tackles and be like, hey, just go get after the quarterback, turn that corner, but also be able to be those edge setters in the run game. Like, if they're going to beat us, it's going to have to be up the middle. They ain't going to beat us on the outside. So I'm very, very excited, and especially with a lot of the depth they have going on here on the defensive line. Like I said, they went out and they plugged a lot of holes. Let's actually go ahead and just get into the depth that they have along this defensive line, as they bring in Ogbo Okoronkwo. I'm terrible with names, but a dude that I felt like deserves to get his flowers, because when given starter like snaps, he has produced. He produced his final year with the Rams, and then he produced with the Texans. For the Texans, for some reason, they didn't allow him to become a starter till like week 11. But when he was exceptionally effective. And now here, he's not going to be the starter, but I think he's going to be used heavily in the rotation because guys like Zadarius Smith and Myles Garrett are capable of kicking inside and going toe-to-toe with guards. So I love that flexibility. They have Alex Wright, who I believe last season, how many snaps did Alex Wright see? But where he's going to pay a lot of dividends, I can't even find it here, but where he's going to pay a lot of dividends, because I really liked him coming out of UAB, is may not be the most explosive guy, but he's a guy with length, and he knows how to use that length exceptionally well. A guy that lined up in that wide alignment for UAB across from Jordan Smith. So I'm really he's the edge 4 in this case. And I think that could even be debatable, but I think this scheme, this system better benefits him. Isaiah McGuire, another dude who, bigger guy, but pretty darn good athlete, goes in the 4th round, a guy that has, I think, the flexibility to be able to kick inside as well. And you're starting to see a very good, just core, very good depth along that defensive line, something they didn't have last season. They get the space here in Siaki Ika. They bring in Dalvin Cook, another big body guy, but someone who likes to get vertical and likes to push the passer. Something he did exceptionally well with the Giants, something he did exceptionally well with the Vikings. And now he's coming to Cleveland and he's going to be doing that as well. However, there's going to be a much taller ask on the linebackers to be able to stop the run. And I have no qualms with Anthony Walker. I think he can do that. I think he's one of the more underrated players around the league. I think he's a solid and a very quality starting linebacker in the NFL. He was banged up last season, so we didn't get to see a ton of him, but solid run defender and a guy that's better in coverage than you would expect. However, with JOK, the dude was playing at like 225 at best. At best. He had a 17% missed tackle rate last season. He isn't exactly an ideal player to stop the run. He just isn't. But how I think he can play into this scheme is, I talked about how Schwartz is very surgical with his blitz, when he decides to blitz. Typically when he has players come in and blitz, they hit home. And he'll do it in a lot of different ways. And with JOK, that's something the Browns just haven't been able to take advantage of, his ability as a blitzer, whether he's coming from like the edge position or coming saying like 7-9 tech, or if he's coming in to shoot a gap. Like I think his rookie season, 10 pressures and 3 sacks. great. And they only asked him to do it like 50 on 55 snaps. Last year, the number was cut down further. Listen, I think JOK, very good coverage linebacker, very good. But when it comes to stopping the run, that's where I become a little queasy. But when we look at the depth that they got here on the linebacker core, Taki, like low key, stepped up, did a very good job in filling in for Anthony Walker last season, and he's been a very good run defender his whole career, and as of late he's gotten much better in coverage as well. So I'm not saying that he's going to come in and he's going to take the spot of JOK, but I'm saying he's probably going to come in and he's going to help alleviate some of that. But then again, also with Schwartz, he doesn't mind his safeties playing a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage, a little bit more in the box. That's why he brings in a guy like Ronnie McLeod, who he was just familiar with in his days in Philly. So I like that a ton too. Ronnie McLeod, man, he's just a solid NFL player. He's kind of bounced around the last few seasons, but has been getting starting snaps, and he's been very effective in that. We'll get to the secondary in a second, but looking at like some of the other guys that they may have that might make the roster here, a linebacker like Jacob Phillips, more of a special teamer. Tony Fields been with the team for quite a while, but he's more akin to like a JOK, like a poor man's JOK. The interesting guys maybe to watch for, Charlie Thomas, who was a UDFA out of Georgia Tech, very undersized, more of a safety build, but he plays with a lot of power. Muhammad Diobati, who plays with that a lot of violence, but and good physicality, someone that can get after the passer, but his coverage instincts not really good. I would say Thomas is probably more far along, so it's gonna be interesting to see if one of those two guys make the roster. I didn't even mention my boy Lonnie Phelps as a UDFA, and like that's a dude that can play special teams as well, but he's kind of like, I mean, he's coming to the right scheme, like someone who can get after, great motor, real fast, good explosiveness, great first step, just undersized, that doesn't have ideal length. So yeah, having him come from wide 9 kind of works in his favor, but I do feel like that this run defense is going to be far better than it was last season, and maybe back to like a middle of the pack, and which that's really good in the NFL. Again, it's a passing league, and we'll get to what they can do on coverage because it is but you still want to be able to stop the run. You still want to be at least a middle of the pack team. If you can't do that well, then your defense is in big trouble. Huge. And I think they'll be much better in that regard this season. Going to the secondary, we got Denzel Ward out there, who was clamoring like, guys, I want to play more man coverage. I want to be able to be locked on to the top target on the opposing offense, and I think he's gonna get that opportunity this season. You got Martin Emerson Jr., who I'm a sucker for. Apparently Mississippi State corners. I loved Emmanuel Forbes, I loved Emerson, and I loved Cameron Dantzler. I know he's a bit all over the league now, but he showed some flashes here and there. But Martin Emerson had a very nice season, 9 pass breakups last year when he stepped up into the starting role. Greg Newsome is just a very good, not even just a slot. I list him here in slot because he did lead the team in slot snaps, but someone who's capable of playing on the outside, wonderful athlete, great for man coverage. But they do go deeper than that. Let's just go ahead and jump to that as they draft Cameron Mitchell, who initially they actually list him as a nickel, and that might be interesting. I don't think he's going to see the field much regardless, but someone who has a nice build, very good athlete, and 5th round I thought was a good range for him. So in this secondary, he's going to be able to sit behind those 3 starters and develop. Mike Ford's kind of a whatever sign in. I'm a big fan of Thomas Graham, a guy that I think I don't know why Chicago let him go. Really puzzled me because I thought he looked good at the back end of his rookie year back in that would have been like 2021, right? He ends up coming here to the Browns. And I think there's a good chance he makes the roster. AJ Green was someone I liked 3 years ago coming out of Oklahoma State. I believe he's a little undersized though. Let's see what he's working with right now. Nah, he ain't even undersized. Look at that, dude. 198. I like it. I love to see it. But so okay, the depth's kind of more so guys you want to develop, but your starting three are kind of phenomenal. They kind of are. And then we get to the secondary, get to the safety position. I list Rodney McLeod here as the starter, more familiarity with Jim Schwartz. That and Grant Delpit, unable to really stay healthy, but when on the field, hasn't been spectacular. The missed tackle rate's really high. They signed Juan Thornhill, who I loved coming out of Virginia. It puzzled me why. Well, maybe I assume Kansas City just didn't want to pay him. But wild signing, good pickup for this Browns defense, and I love the secondary. It's one of my favorite secondaries in football. And I mean, and if Grant Delpit, even if he meets a little bit of the expectation I had when he came out of LSU, then you're talking about a very good three safeties. Because I mean, that's another thing with Schwartz. He liked to play three safeties a lot of the time. However, I mean, your corners are so good, I don't think that's going to be the case. Looking at the other depth, or the remainder of the depth that they have here in the secondary, Ronnie Hickman, is a really good pickup. Someone how I was shocked didn't get drafted. I thought he plays fast, whether it's in the box, in the slot. Didn't really get to see him play deep too much for Ohio State, but literally a rocket. This guy comes in like a heat-seeking missile, relatively good missed tackle rate. So someone keep your eye on. If anything, I think he's probably the backup slot here. I don't know. We'll see. Tanner McAllister, we don't really need to talk about him. They got him over here, but I don't think he makes the squad. I wasn't that impressed with him. Hey, my boy Bubba Bolden. The Hurricanes, baby. Probably doesn't make the squad either. But yeah, no, this defense, for real, should be, on paper, looks like a top 10 unit. It really does. The question is, how much overnight will this run defense evolve? I don't think it's fair to expect that overnight this run defense will just immediately fix itself. But I do think that the secondary is going to have a lot less pressure off of them, and there's going to be more coordination with that secondary as well. I mean, we saw a plethora of blown coverages last season. I think a large part of that was just the inability, the ineffectiveness of the run defense. But I expect that to be better with some of the additions they have made, like Tomlinson, getting Siaki Ika. I expect that. I really do expect the defensive front to be not just good, but borderline scary, because like Tomlinson, Smith, Garrett, those are guys that could get to the quarterback and get to the quarterback in a hurry. Anthony Walker is a bit slept on, I feel like, at this point. He's a very solid starting linebacker in the NFL. JOK, how versatile will they get with him? But I mean, at the end of the day, man, that back end is just so freaking good. There's a reason to be excited. There is hope here in Cleveland. It's just a shame the AFC is just this monster. Literally, the AFC is going to be difficult. And this is where we get to my prediction. Currently, the Vegas over and under is 9.5. And it's going to be tough. I think that's going to be tough for the Browns to eclipse. I wouldn't want to bet it because I think this team could be an 11-win team. However, when it came down to it, when it came down to my own prediction, I ended up going with the Browns at 9 and 8, and it kind of feels like that this might be lowballing the Browns, but it's not like they play an exceptionally tough division, and then they play in the AFC. Granted, I think they get the AFC South, but then they have to face the NFC West. So you're facing Seattle, you're facing the Niners. Granted, the Rams and the Cardinals should kind of be gimme games, but let's go with the game by game. So the Browns, they open up with the Bengals. In these inter-division games, I like to, especially in a division this tough, these teams are going to be beating one another. It's going to be a bloodbath in the AFC North. So I typically lean with giving the home team the win. So I have them beating the Bengals. Bengals are a tougher team at the end of the year. At least they were last season. Losing the Steelers there at home. Do have them beating the Titans though, and then beating the Ravens. So actually a pretty, like, you get 3 division games start the year with a Titans team who just added D-Hop. Kind of a tough road, and I have them going 3-1. So not bad. I have them beating the Niners. They're coming out of their bye. And it really kind of depends what the timetable is with Brock Purdy. I mean, the Niners are a really good squad, so this is a really good win for them. I do have Seattle, though, beating them. I think they could go 1-1 in between those 2 games, beating the Colts, beating the Cardinals. I do have the Denver Broncos getting a win. I do think the Broncos are going to be much better. We're going to talk about them very soon in one of our deep dive videos. I do have the Jags and the Bears scraping out a win. I gotta imagine, man, the Bears, again, we don't know how good this run defense, like, I don't think it's going to be overnight, and the Bears are one of the scariest teams when it comes to their run game. I know a lot of people are going to laugh off that Texans win, but this one's in Houston. Texans get to potentially beat Deshaun Watson. I think I'm going to give it to the Texans. But yeah, man, I think 9-8. I mean, a few of these games could go the other way. I think that's kind of the range, though. 9 to 11 wins. I don't think this team will be under 500. They feel too good to be under 500, though. You can make an argument that 9-8 is exceptionally close to being under 500. Matter of fact, it's one loss. One of those wins turning into a big L could put them under, but this team is just studded. They have a lot of superstars. They have a lot of studs on this roster. Best offensive line in football, at least one of the best offensive lines in football. One of, if not the best running back in football. They got a really solid number 1 receiver, Amari Cooper. Add in Elijah Moore, I thought was a really big addition. Now I think Elijah Moore, who he showed a lot of flashes with the Jets. Do think the defense is going to be much better. So, yeah, I don't know. You let me know what you think in the comment section below. I feel like I've kind of given my overall thought on this Browns squad, that it's very talented, but it's going to be hard to project offensively because of Deshaun Watson. What Deshaun are we going to see defensively? How good can this run defense get after one off season? And I don't want to put all my eggs just in that basket, despite me really liking a lot of the moves that they made. Zadarius Smith, Dalvin Tomlinson, just huge moves. Drafting Siaki Ika. I know some people didn't like Siaki Ika, but for what he's going to be asked to do here, I think he's going to do it exceptionally well. Matter of fact, with Baylor last season, Siaki Ika was really just asked to be a run stuffer first, and now in this offense, Jim Schwartz, he's gonna be like, no, go and get after it, go attack. But that's it for the video. Go ahead, do the YouTube thing as always. Until next time, you be easy, my friends. Later.